There it is. He timed it right.
Counting to explode with the left. Oh, and that right, but Davis took off some of the steam of the punch, but still.
Welcome to the motherfucking lady. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. MVP co-founder Nikisa Badarian took to his social media to commemorate what will end up being one of Amanda Serrano's final fights in the sport. Amanda Serrano equals most divisions, most titles, most watched, most paid, and most responsible for MVP investing in women's boxing in the first place, where we have now over 50 fighters and partnerships with ESPN, Sky, Netflix, and DAZN, with women's boxing being a core of all of it. Thank you, Amandia, because you made us believe. There's a lot of talk right now about who the face of women's boxing is in light of Claressa Shields' previous performance. Katie and Amanda, of course, which there are many sectors and arenas where you can have this conversation in. Most seem to have it on the premise of personal accomplishments and accolades. What a fighter manages to do throughout their career, do for themselves. On that predication, some choose to give it to Claressa because she's more accomplished than Katie and Amanda, at least on paper she is. But what is that really doing for the sport? And what is she really generating? The face of boxing, generally speaking, is the fighter that earns the most, and Claressa doesn't earn more than Amanda Serrano, that's established. My previous video, we talked about the fight purse for the fight that she just had with Kay Scotch. A paltry $500,000, where Amanda earns a lot more than that. And we're not talking about for the big fights, like the Katie Taylor fight, the trilogy. She gets more than Claressa even for the smaller fights. On average, she is earning more. So if it comes back after this weekend's fight from the California State Athletic Commission that she made anywhere near $500,000 or more for what is a noticeably smaller event, well, that's not a good look for Claressa. You had to fight in front of 18,000 people to get 500 large. Amanda would have only had to fight in front of 3,000 people. And not even against a champion to get the same or more as Claressa? That doesn't strengthen the argument that Claressa's the face of women's boxing. Amandia, responding to Nikisa Badarian's tweet, said, "This is what matters most. What I've done to convince these amazing men, Jake Paul and Nikisa Badarian, to continue believing in us women. I don't care about anything else. I'm a multi-millionaire already. I've accomplished all my goals in the ring. Now I want every other woman to surpass me and continue to open doors for them." You see, that's her biggest contribution. It's not simply anything that she's accomplished throughout her own career, her personal accomplishments and accolades, but what she's also doing for everybody else. It all starts with Amanda Serrano for MVP, who have fast become the flagship promotion for women boxers all around the world, the proverbial rising tide that lifts all boats. It begins with Amanda, and I would say that she's done a lot more for this industry than Claressa alone. What has Claressa actually done for anybody by fighting for vacant titles in what are empty weight classes? What did she do for Kay Scotch by giving her a paltry 52, 54 G's? Fuck around, Kay would have got more money to fight Amanda than Claressa. The idea here is Claressa Shields' role in the story of women's boxing is often overstated. Other fighters who have contributed more and are still contributing more are often marginalized and placed in her shadow when she actually has them to thank. Claressa doesn't get to fight for 2 gold medals unless Katie Taylor convinces the IOC to allow women to box in the Olympics. That's where that started, and that's had the biggest effect on the women's game in the last decade. Claressa has Katie Taylor to thank for even being able to box for gold medals. She's got Amanda Serrano to thank for popularizing the sport in this part of the world, because it was Amanda and Katie that brought Netflix to the table, to the women's game, not Claressa and anything that she was doing. It was Amanda and Katie that shattered the glass ceiling for what a woman boxer can be paid for a boxing match. They jointly hold the highest purses in the history of women's boxing. That's what they're doing for the girls. What's Claressa doing? Paying a retired guidance counselor 52 large to lay down? What's she doing? Abusing on senior citizens in what is an empty division? I'm sorry, but Claressa is nowhere near as influential as she is made out to be by the American media and some content creators. Her contribution, it's nauseating to see how her accolades are often exaggerated. Her role in all of this. When MVP as a promotion is doing more for the women's game, doing more for more women, literally, not figuratively, not down the line, not after a couple of generations, here and now.
Mao.
And that all starts with Amanda Serrano, that movement.
Because to know Amanda is to love Amanda.
They think that her gracious disposition is just the face that she gives the media. They must not have dealt with her on a personal level, but ask around. Amanda's a great lady. And she doesn't even have to keep boxing. What she said is true. She's already a multimillionaire with enough money to walk away right now. She's choosing to fight on. I don't understand how people could think that being the face of boxing all hinges on having a perfect, unbeaten, unblemished record. Muhammad Ali didn't have an unblemished record. He had a couple of losses, but who could argue that he was the face of boxing? Canelo Alvarez has been the face of boxing for a while, and he doesn't have an unbeaten, unblemished record. So why exactly would Clarissa's unbeaten, unblemished record make her the face when there's literally other fighters earning more than she is, contributing more than she is? Katie and Amanda jointly have drawn more eyes to this sport and the women than anything and everything Clarissa's done. So it simply doesn't make sense and can't be quantified. Men's junior middleweight news, a second look at Ortiz's exploration of the middleweight division and fights with Erislandy Lara, Carlos Adames, and more. The Ring's Mike Coppinger confirmed during the newest episode of Inside the Ring, which debuted on Monday, on DAZN, that Ortiz will likely move up to middleweight for his next fight sometime in November. Among the names the WBC interim junior middleweight champion is eyeing for his middleweight debut are WBA champion Erislandy Lara! WBC champion Carlos Adames, former undisputed junior middleweight champion Jermell Charlo, and ex-WBO junior middleweight champion Tszyu. Ortiz's manager, Prick Merrigan, previously told the Ring's Manuka Kopiang that Ortiz could move up to 160 for his return fight in November, though they were still keeping their options open at 154. Ortiz of Grand Prairie, Texas, is the Ring's number 2 ranked junior middleweight. Ortiz, 24-0 with 22 KOs, last fought November 8th when he scored a second-round stoppage of Erickson Lubricant. That dominant win was expected to set the stage for the long-stalled showdown with Jaron Ennis, but Ortiz sued his promoter, Golden Boy Promotions, for breach of contract on January 16th in a Nevada court. Ortiz, now 28, then sought to fight Ennis, 29, without Golden Boy's involvement in April, but Golden Boy was granted a temporary restraining order on February 13th to block the fight. Block it, at least without their involvement. Why is that important? Because if not for Prick Merrigan and Vergil Ortiz attempting to backdoor Golden Boy, the fight would have went through and they would have had it. So if they didn't have it, it's their fault. How much more time do you expect Jaron Ennis to waste on this? And for what? Vergil is not bringing a belt to the table. The negotiations are likely going to be difficult. Ortiz is going to want half. Now, Jaron Ennis has not won but 2 alphabet titles in the junior middleweight division and seemingly bigger fish to fry. So now Ortiz and Golden Boy have since smoothed things over and reached an amicable settlement on July 17th to avoid arbitration and any pending litigation. Ennis, the Ring's number 1 contender for a vacant junior middleweight title, moved on and beat Xander Zayas by 7th round knockout to become the WBA and WBO junior middleweight champion on June 27th at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. The Philly native is expected to now face IBF champion Kosh Jelly, ranked number 6 by the Ring, next in a unification bout late this year. Any of Ortiz's preferred fights at 160 would be significant and represent the biggest fights of his career. Adames, the Ring's number 1 contender for a title that is also unclaimed. Lara is number 4. Charlo hasn't fought since September of 2023 when he lost a one-sided UD to then undisputed super middleweight champion Canelo Alvarez. Tszyu, who's coming off a one-sided UD win over Errol Spence Jr. this past July in Sydney, Australia. Ortiz and Tszyu were scheduled to fight in August of 2024, but the Aussie wasn't medically cleared to train in time due to a career-altering cut he suffered early in his 12-round split decision defeat to Sebastian Fundora in March of that year. Now, some people are framing this as if Vergil Ortiz has the whole junior middleweight division running scared. Rick Glacier, who said with the top guys at junior middle not willing to take on Vergil Ortiz, including everyone's favorite Boots Ennis, now Vergil's going to 160 and Ortiz will be even better at 160 as he'll be able to use his legs more as he won't be so weight drained. Definitely a great move for Vergil, and he will add much-needed life to what has been a dreadful middleweight division in recent years.
Don't gloss over the fact that Matchroom is doing a much better job with Jaron Ennis than Golden Boy is doing with Vergil Ortiz. Jaron Ennis is now a two-weight unified champion, where Vergil has yet to box for a full alphabet title.
That Jaron Ennis' star is rising under the watchful eye and capable promotion of Matchroom, who Rick Glacier often likes to criticize, as if his buddies at Golden Boy are doing a better job with Vergil. Near as I can tell, all Vergil is a two-weight contender.
Woohoo.
Was recently expressed from Vergil's side that they're looking at fights with the likes of Tszyu, fights with the likes of Jermell Charlo, except that Jermell Charlo himself said, "It's not true at all that he's fighting Vergil. I talked to Al Heyman myself, and I'm fighting Tszyu next. We're working on the location."
That's two guys that Vergil was looking at.
You can't fight Jermell Charlo if he's fighting Tszyu, and you can't fight Tszyu either. So what should Vergil do?
Go after Lara, like I've been saying.
The night of the fight, it will probably have been a year's time from Vergil's last fight. This kid really has a penchant for wasting people's time. But Erislandy Lara is old and depleted enough, slowed down enough, that Vergil Ortiz's pressure should be able to get to him.
If he is every inch the fighter that his supporters and members of his team make him out to be, then he shouldn't need a tune-up fight to fight an old man like Erislandy Lara, who's only managed to stay in the winner's bracket all these years by barely fighting, and when he does fight, it's usually against the cream puff.
That if Vergil Ortiz can't beat today's Erislandy Lara, I don't know what to tell you. You must not be an elite fighter if you can't make it past that old man.
What about the Tszyu stuff?
Veteran content creator T Street Controversy said, Jermell Charlo is rumored to be fighting Tszyu next, with PBC funneling their fighters through No Limits funds. LOL. I can't knock it. I guess this fight will be in Australia too.
It better be if they want it to be worth something, because Tszyu is not a draw in the United States, and neither is Jermell. He hasn't fought in 3 years.
That fight doesn't generate anything in the United States, but in Australia, it can be a big one, just like the Spence fight was. Errol Spence Jr. historically was always a bigger name, a bigger draw than Jermell, and in the end, he bit the bullet, got his passport out, and went down there. So Jermell,
pack your bags.
because there's only so many ways you can get a multi-million-dollar purse staying home, but going down there,
Might have a shot. Listen, I don't even think Tszyu is all the way back to competing at the level that he used to, because he beat a quasi-retired Errol Spence Jr. You can see what Tim is doing.
he's feasting on these quasi-retired PBC fighters that used to be names before, but now they're cannon fodder. And there is a sort of poetic justice to what he's doing, being the one to retire Errol Spence Jr. If he beats Jermell, I think that'll retire him too.
What's poetic about that?
I've always felt that it was the PBC's intention to derail Tszyu, to sabotage him. What happened in the first Sebastian Fundora fight, Keith Thurman suddenly pulling out and Tszyu ending up with the exact opposite of what he was training for.
He's training for a guy 5'7", in his mid-30s, orthodox fighter. He ends up with a 6'5" southpaw
In his mid-20s, the exact opposite of what he was training for, and I don't think that's a coincidence.
They sabotaged him, so that what you're seeing now is tantamount to karma.
Karma's a bitch.
Okay. So as I was saying at the very top, so we're on the break, and I do see that there's this news that the WBO has ordered that you face Janibek in your next title defense, and this has created quite the stir, especially online, because for those that may not be following the story, he tested positive for a PED back in December of last year, and it was a 1-year suspension. But then all of a sudden, the suspension got reduced, and now they're saying that he's your mandatory. And so there are some people out there who will come out and say that, like, you pop once, you should be, banned from the sport. This is actually multiple infractions, and the suspension is getting reduced. And some might even say, like, the 1-year suspension wasn't enough. And so when you find out that A, it got reduced to essentially like a half suspension, and B, he's your mandatory, what is your reaction?
I'll be honest with you, Ariel. I think it's a joke. I think what the WBO have done here is disgraceful to the sport of boxing as well. What you're essentially doing, or what they're essentially doing, is rewarding someone who's been popped. So to me, it doesn't make sense. And on top of all of that, not just rewarding him for being popped, but while he's banned, while he's still serving a ban. So it does not make sense. I like to think of myself as someone who's come up through the ranks and honoured and respected the clean sport program, respected the fact that through hard work, through the ups and the downs, I've got there as a champion. And now that I'm here, I'd have a kind of, I wouldn't say, I'd have a more kind of smooth and more simple ride in terms of fulfilling the mandatories in who I thought would be Jacob Bank for my last fight. And I just think it's bad for the sport of boxing, you know, giving these guys the platforms and almost saying, yeah, don't worry, it's okay, we'll just crack on as normal and act like nothing's happened.
Okay, so their explanation, or at least part of it, and I do want to correct something. I said multiple, they say first-time offender, so I want to apologize for that. I was getting his story confused with our next guest who's going to talk about multiple offenders. So I want to apologize to Janibek for that. But the WBO ended the suspension early, canceling it on July 10th of this year, so a bit over a month ago, saying that he's, quote, a first-time offender with a, quote, impeccable personal and professional record. Do you feel like first time offender, to say that, okay, it's your first time and that you have an impeccable personal professional record, that shouldn't, there's always something that you could say that's good about someone to reduce it that quickly. And then in addition to that, reward the individual with a title shot seems like a double whammy.
Yeah, in a new weight category as well.
Yes.
One which he's not competed in before. But listen, it's all the organising bodies doing. Do you know what I mean? They're the ones who's responsible for all of this. Like you said, a first-time offender. Like, come on, man, you're talking about someone who's been popped here. It doesn't matter if it's the first time. Like, you know what I mean? It's being popped is being popped.
If that's the case, why are you so focused on fighting Canelo? Canelo Alvarez got popped the same as Janibek Alimkhanuly. It wasn't recent, but it still happened. If you're going to stand on the pulpit on principle about Janibek, why not do the same thing with Canelo? And it's because fighting Canelo...
Trust me, if he stood to make fighting Janibek what he stands to make fighting Canelo, he'd be singing a very different tune.
And what nobody seems to mention when it comes to Janibek is he actually had a viable reason for what happened. It was from an emergency room visit and a drug that was prescribed to him, all of which was corroborated by the national database in Kazakhstan.
Now, I understand the sentiment that all of these fighters, every single one of them, seems to have a lofty explanation for what happened, and none of them ever seem to know how the drugs got there, whereas with Janibek,
they're telling you what happened, and they have the corresponding documents to back it up, which is more than we've gotten from a lot of other fighters. In some instances, we don't even get a straight answer.
We never got a straight answer from Ryan where that Osterin came from. His story changed so many times, and Connor...
The WBC tried to help him out by using eggs, overconsumption of eggs as an explanation, which he says wasn't the case.
So then what was it?
I will defer to Adam Abramovitz's reaction to Hamza Sheeraz's comments. After they gave you being Hamza Sheeraz, an absolute cupcake for a title shot, where's my violin?
The point being, if you've been paying attention, Hamza Sheeraz has been fortunate in more than one situation.
Some would argue that they bent the rules for you in that Carlos Adames fight, so that if they're now bending the rules for Janibek, what's good for the goose is good for the gander.